Okay, it is now 6 o'clock, so we are going to start. I hope we have everybody in the correct seats. We have the inductees and their presenters over here. Here, and I'm sure all of you know that, but I am retired, so I got to watch him at 10 o'clock in the morning when he went to address the Congress of the United States, which is the first time that it ever happened. And he said in his first remarks that he was honored to be there in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And that really kind of struck me, because a lot of countries don't have that. And at this time, I would like to thank all of our armed forces, all the men and women that put their sacrifice and dedication out there every day. And that includes our policemen and our firemen, and we cannot leave out our administrators, teachers, and coaches, because they put themselves in harm's way every day. So right now, I'd like to give them a round of applause. Everybody hear me all right? If you can, you're sitting too close. It's my honor and privilege to guide you through tonight's ceremony as efficiently as possible. Please follow along in your program. Did you manage to get a program on the way in? Wrestlers? All right, just check. We have many thank yous. You can't put on something like this unless a lot of people are in the program. And I'd just like to go through them. They're all very important. They're not listed in any order, but we want to thank them. We'd like to thank Mr. McKevney, the Superintendent of Schools, and the Board of Education. Without their approval and guidance, we couldn't run this place. A couple years ago, they put in some renovations, and they gave us a Hall of Fame section in the gymnasium and foyer. And if you haven't gotten a chance to see it, you really should. And we've talked about making it easier for you people that come into town to get up there. It is truly outstanding. A lot of Hall of Fames don't have a location like we do. I'd like to thank Chris. He's our guy at the museum, and you'll see later, he does all the pictures for us that we do for the teams. He does a great job with it. We want to thank him. We want to thank the SMS for the gathering that we have on Saturday night before our festivities. They do a great job. It's kind of a different atmosphere, and we get together in a little bit for a better time. Not tonight, it's going to be a bad time. I'd like to thank Carlo Lorenzetti and our Alumni Association for their support, and Carlo does all the books for us. I'm a little worried, though, because they just got back from Italy a little while ago. Custom engraving. They do all of our plaques, and I'm sure that everybody saw the plaques as they come in for each inductee. They do a great job with it. They spell things right. It's amazing. I'd like to thank Amy Galen and New York Chiropractic College. She's been doing this for a few years, and she's very good at it. Nobody has a location for their Hall of Fame like we have. Many places do it in a restaurant or a cafeteria. We have an excellent dining hall upstairs, and we have this Delavan Theater for it, and it really adds to our program. I'd like to thank Jimmy Senecropi and Finger Lakes One for the podcast. We've gotten a lot of feedback on it. We have members in California, Florida, North Carolina. We have many people that have made the trip this weekend. It is amazing how many people are interested and they watch it on the podcast. So we thank Jimmy for that. We like to thank the Seneca Falls Historical Society. They help us with our research, like this year with the 1921-22 girls basketball team. They got pictures for us and they gave us the information. Sponsors. In the back of the book, we have a page with sponsors. Please take a look at it, not only tonight, look it over. These people are our lifeblood. We have many individuals that sponsor us every year. We have many businesses. Those of you who sponsor, we hope that you continue to do that. Those of you that don't, we could hope that you would make a contribution if you can in the future. Without those contributions, we can't do the stuff we do. And we thank you for all of your contributions also. In the back of the program, we have a list of 2 or 3 pages there. We put it in 2 years ago. It's a list of accomplishments that last year's seniors did. And that includes Scholar Athlete, and then includes their sports. So what we're doing tonight is honoring the past, but we want you to know that the kids now of the present are doing their job also. And we have some excellent student athletes. And last but certainly not least, the committee that puts this on. They are truly the most dedicated bunch of people that I have ever worked with in my life. And I've had a lot of committees, and I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. Each one has a different part, and they do it very well. And it is amazing the time and effort that they put in to put this thing on for you people. They pay attention to detail, and they never give up on something. They research it, and you'll see the results tonight. So I'm going to name the members of our committee. If you would stand and remain standing, and we'll give you a round of applause at the end. Lisa Carasillo Anderson, John Capacci, John Nicholson is a Hall of Fame member. Lisa is a Hall of Fame member also. Tony Ferrara, Ted Novak, Liz Beck, she's in front, usually she's in the booth. She's a Hall of Fame member also. And Pete Wormuth. I don't want to single Pete out, but he's had some difficulties in the last few months with some physical problems. But I'll tell you what, he's always there. He's the guy that led us down the path for our Title IX stuff. And he had to miss a meeting or so, and I think it killed him. But we always enjoy him being there, and we appreciate the fact that he comes to play, even being hurt. Next thing, if you're following along in your programs, we have a recap of last year's induction. That'll be right here on this screen. Thank God. I have enough trouble reading in the light without the dark. Okay, at this time in our program, we go through all of our inductees that we've had. It doesn't take very long, but it's a special list, and we have a lot of those people here tonight. If you are here and I read your name, please rise and stand until I get through the whole list. It's a special honor, and I know nobody likes to stand up in front of everybody, but you are special, so please stand and remain standing. We'll give them a round of applause at the end. Jerry Anderson, Joe Avaduti, Lisa Carasillo Anderson, Beth Ann Bradshaw, Bob Buchwald, came all the way from Florida, Gary Bullis, George Capacci, who'll be in this year, Dominic Kartz Carasillo, Dominic Carasillo, Jean Carasillo, Lindsay Gotham Cornu, Chris Dragone, Coach George Davis, Coach Michael Ferrara, Larry Justy, Lisa Palzanetti Galvin, Coach Alan Henry, Lee Letizia, Krista Rushak Long, Karen Laux, Jeff Manning, Dave McNaney, Richard Abe Myers, Coach John Nicholson, John Panucci, Fran Piscatelli, Mark Piscatelli, Les Robinson, Steve Siegfried, Bob Valiceni, George Valiceni, Andrew Verkey, Matt Verkey, myself, Dave Wormuth. Give them a round of applause, please. And one of our goals is, if you can, try and make it back the next year. People want to meet the old inductees, and gives you a chance to meet the new ones. Right now we have our lifetime contributors. If you are present, please stand and get a round of applause. Arthur Baker, Dave Baker, Liz Beck, John Brock, Peter DeBatis, Bruce Knapp Sr., Dr. J. Stanley Marshall, Mike Nazzolio, Nick Nettie, Dom Paradise, Angelo Suffredini, Warren Speed Wormuth. Round of applause. We also have honored teams in our Hall of Fame. If you are a member of any of these teams that I read, please rise and get a round of applause. 1946 football team, 1938 football team. If we have anybody from that team, I'd like to give them a special award. They were, okay. The 1952, 53, 54 baseball teams. 66, 67 wrestling teams. You guys can stand up even though it's premature. We still may take it back. 85 girls soccer team. 94 girls basketball team. 92 boys basketball team. Congratulations. A few years ago, through Pete's dedication and research on this, we added our forerunners to Title IX. And if there's any of those people here today, please rise. Angie Banavanis, Barry Doan Clark, and again, 1921-22 girls basketball team. If anybody's here, they get an award also. Diana Stackelhouse Panucci, Helen Reynolds Westfall. Very good. It's been exactly 1 year since our last induction ceremony. During the past year, our committee has learned that a few of our Hall of Fame members have passed away. It was an honor to recognize these athletes for their accomplishments. We now wish to honor them one last time. We hope that this short video will summon fond memories of our departed classmates and friends. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure those three guys are watching right now. Okay, next it's my pleasure to introduce Liz Beck, and she's going to do our Title IX presentation.
Before this. 1972 could be called the birth date of women's interscholastic athletics. To honor that event, a special ongoing award was initiated at the 2012 Minders Academy Athletic Hall of Fame induction ceremony. This award honors those women who were considered stellar athletes but did not have the opportunity to achieve the accolades like their male counterparts. This year, while Ted Novak was doing some Hall of Fame research at the Seneca Falls Historical Society, Kathy Jans Duffy approached him with information concerning the 1921-22 girls basketball team. This is the earliest known undefeated girls basketball team in Minders history. The team played area high schools, but also played industrial teams, including the Kodak All-Stars of Rochester and the Women's Educational and Industrial Union of Auburn. They compiled a team record of 17-0 while averaging 22.6 points a game and giving up an average of 8.4 points. In keeping with the pre-Title IX practices of the times, this team paid for their own uniforms, the basketballs, and gym rental. The Minders Academy Athletic Hall of Fame is proud to honor the 1921-22 girls basketball team as a forerunner to Title IX. Ted Novak let us know that he was playing the ukulele in the background for that film. Accepting the plaque for the 1921-22 team is the son of team member Dorothy Suen, John King.
Thank you very much. I spoke with Liz Beck a little earlier this evening, and she said we were looking for you, but we figured with Dorothy being 17 at 1921, you had to be 90. So I told her, you know, that my mother had me later in life. She was not a tramp. My mother was not a person who was prone to bragging, but she was very proud of her high school basketball team. She had fond memories of the team, her friends, and her fellow players. She always said that they were the main team. The boys' team was the warm-up. But I can't believe it. 300 people at a game in 1921. It's a real honor for me to speak on behalf of my mother and the girls of the Minders basketball team of 1921-22 and their undefeated year of 17 wins and no losses. On behalf of my mother and the team, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this great honor. Thank you.
Thanks for clearing that up too, John. Now we'll do our lifetime contributors, and we'll have John DeBatis, who'll be coming forward and speaking for his dad.
Rod gave me some advice last night. He told me I should probably write this down. So I'll try and see if we can get through this. Sorry, I'm getting old. Need my readers. All right. Lifetime Achievement Awards, about the man he was and the impact he had on other people's lives. The impact he had on me as a father and a coach helped me to achieve things as a child, athlete, husband, father, and now a grandfather. We used to sit around the table late at night. He was working on things for school. I was eating, of course. One discussion in particular stood out. He told me, life is a ladder. You're always trying to climb. Sometimes you're going up, other times you're going down. I went down a lot. Each step up is an achievement. Each step down is a lesson that hopefully will help you turn around and head back up. The strength of your ladder depends on the support at the bottom, support provided by family, friends, coaches, teammates, etc. Here are some of the steps that I remember. As a college wrestling official, Dad took Steve and I to Saturday matches at Colgate, Cornell, Syracuse. One Saturday, sitting in the locker room at Syracuse University, Dad introduced us to a giant, and I mean a giant. Big Jim Nance, remember him? Two-time NCAA heavyweight champion, future pro football player for the New England Patriots, fullback for the Syracuse football team. Steve and I didn't wash our hands for a week. Today I'm a college lacrosse official. I learned from my dad that officiating college sports was something that I wanted to do. I've had the pleasure of meeting players and coaches from two-time NCAA championship team Duke. As a Little League football coach, He had the unique ability to recognize and develop talent, leading to 5 straight championships, 4 of which I played on. As an educator, he used this ability to find teachers and coaches, some of which preceded him into the Hall of Fame. Deco told me tonight, he goes, your dad, the first question he would ask me before he'd hire teachers, what coaching position was open and what did he need? He said it was a big help. I'm an assigner of high school lacrosse in North Carolina now. I have to find and train officials in a state where nobody knows anything about lacrosse, so you're trying to train football officials. So recognizing talent, developing talent is something I learned from my dad. As a student athlete in a small town with your dad as a principal, jeez. Man, I tell you, you get some experiences that other kids just don't get. One day in middle school, I walked into the cafeteria and there was a pile of chairs. I had nothing to do with this, of course. No, but the lunch lady sent me to the office. And of course, when you go to the office, you go see Dad. Now, as John Nicholson and Ted Novak can tell you, can attest that I could be difficult at times as a child. Dad sent me home where I decided it was time for me to go out on my own. With a backpack and $13 I'd made from flinging papers in the morning, I headed off to New York City on a 3-speed bicycle. 5 hours later, exhausted and hungry, I called home from a McDonald's in Ithaca. 30 minutes later, Dad showed up. Instead of yelling at me, he took me to dinner. I didn't have the heart to tell him I had already had 3 burgers, 2 fries, and 2 milkshakes at McDonald's waiting for him to show up. So I ate again. During dinner, he explained to me that people were going to judge me based on who I was and who I might be related to, and that, it can't affect what you do. He basically accepted the blame. Took me home, and it was over. Friday, March 21st, 1975. We just won the first championship in Minders history. At one end of the court, my teammates are jumping up on the net. Down comes crashing the goal. Deco got a bill for about $5,000. Man, he was pissed. At the other end, I jumped up, grabbed the net. Thank God I only weighed $165 back then. If I weighed what I did now, that end probably would have came down too. But before anything could happen, my dad was there, standing on his shoulders, took that net down. That night, he was my ladder. What a lot of people don't know, I wasn't even supposed to play that game. Tuesday night, after the semifinal win, coming home from the War Memorial, back of the bus, car behind us flashing its lights. So we think it's people like Carol Capacci, Joanne Verkey, some of the senior girls. So what do? I moon them. Turns out to be old man Nearpass and his 14-year-old daughter, Mary. I don't know if Mary turned me in or Stevie did, but next day I showed up for dinner, and Dad was not a happy camper. He basically told me I was suspended and wouldn't play Friday night. So it's amazing what you can do when you get a second chance. So he taught that lesson well. He taught me you can't build a community without ladders. You can't build a home, community, schools. I look in this crowd tonight, I see a lot of ladders. Capacci's, Nicholson's, Novak's, Verkeys, Sandronis, you name it, they're all out there. And that's why we have the community we have today. Spent 7 years since Dad passed away. 15 months ago. I was diagnosed with stage 3 throat cancer. When you hear that word cancer, you don't know what to expect. A week later, go to see the oncologist. They tell me it's a very curable cancer. At that time, I knew my dad was still supporting my ladder, but not from the bottom, but from the top. A year ago today, I was a sick individual. Today I stand before you, total remission, healthy as a horse. What a difference a year can make. Tonight, we celebrate what a difference a lifetime can make. On behalf of my dad's greatest achievement, my family, I'm introducing Peter DeBatis, Hall of Fame class 2015. All right.
You can set that word right down there when you're through with it.
I'll accept this award on behalf of my dad and my mom, who doesn't want to come up the stairs. But these are her words. They were married for 60 years before he died, so she knew him pretty well. So here it goes. If Dad were here with us to accept this honor, the first thing I think he would say is how pleased he was for all the other members of this Hall of Fame class of 2015 inductees. He loved to see others recognized for their achievements, especially if they were his students or his colleagues. So from my dad, congratulations to all of you on a job well done, those of you that are being inducted tonight and those that have already been inducted. My family and I are pleased to accept this award for Dad. He was so proud of Minders and all its amazing opportunities, but he had a real soft spot for the sports programs. He loved being on the Minders faculty and part of the Minders family. I'd be especially proud today to be a part of this Hall of Fame class. So on behalf of Dad and my entire family, thank you to the committee and all the others who have worked so hard to make this program a very special occasion. Thank you.
As you probably noticed, we switched from that side to this side. You guys should be very proud. You did an excellent job for your dad. I'm not sure I could have got through with it, and you guys did a very good job. However, I'm a little offended that you thought it was my sister behind you and you were going to moon her. At this time, we'd like to have Mark Piscatelli come up.
Good evening. Tonight I have the distinct pleasure and honor to introduce the Honorable Senator Michael Francis Nozzolio into the Hall of Fame as a lifetime contributor to the Minders Academy athletic program. Mike and Rosemary have devoted their adult lives to public service and have made significant contributions to the community since being first elected to the New York State Assembly in 1982, a career where they have sacrificed much of their personal life to that of serving the community. As you know, their job in Albany is not a 9-to-5 job, but one that requires many hours during each day and night and weekend to provide quality service to the constituents of his district. He has done so in an honorable, unselfish, compassionate, and effective way since 1982. So effective and recognized by his constituents that he ran unopposed in several elections. Mike serves with passion to do the best for his district. He clearly is recognized and respected by his peers in Albany as a performer, and have selected him as the majority whip of the New York Senate. That is in addition to either chairing or being a member of several important committees in the Senate. His New York State resume is so impressive and vast that I recently joked with Mike, telling him, once the paperback version comes out, I'll read it. But if I could try to put things in perspective as to Mike's service and dedication to the community over the years, I'd like to share with you the following quote I saw beneath a statue in Greenville, South Carolina, while I was visiting my daughter. A statue of that of Mr. Max Heller. Mr. Heller quoted, "My goal wasn't to be the richest man in the cemetery." Mr. Heller escaped from Nazi Germany in 1938, became mayor of Greenville in 1971, and transformed a small, decaying mill community into a thriving, modern community, the home of BMW, Michelin, TD Ameritrade, a technology center for research and development for Clemson University, and recently, Bonadent, to name a few. My point is that, like Mr. Heller, Mike easily could have chosen a more lucrative career path, but his passion was to serve the community since he interned with Congressman Gary Lee in the early 70s. Over the years, he has worked his tail off to secure funding for numerous projects, organizations such as the Sampson Park, the Cornell Research Facility in Geneva, several Seneca Falls community athletic programs, just to name a few. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, I haven't lived in Seneca Falls since 1973, and many of you seated here this evening are much more knowledgeable than I am of Mike's accomplishments while being your assemblyman and state senator. However, I'd like to share with you some of my experiences with Mike since we first met in the fall of 1956 in St. Patrick's Kindergarten on Swaby Street. I'd like to tell you a little story. I know we're short for time, but 5 years old, kindergarten, one of the first things you do is go out and get a leaf, you trace it, you color it. Seems like a pretty simple task, seems like a fun task, okay? Well, I'll tell you what, for a person who's colorblind, it's not so much fun. And Mike knew after the first couple episodes and postings that I had issues and I had problems. So he would tell me what crayon to use, okay? Might not seem like a big deal, but I'll tell you what, to a 5-year-old in kindergarten, it was a big deal. While we all know about Mike's political accomplishments, what many of you don't know is that Mike, along with Joe Lawson, were the reasons why we had an undefeated 14-0 CYO basketball team at St. Patrick's back in the 64-65 season. Also, as you probably don't remember or don't know, but when Pop Warner League first started here in Seneca Falls in the mid-60s, it was Mike Nozzolio, clearly was the best player, clearly. He had a reputation as being quite the athlete. At Minders, Coach Davis knew what it took to be successful. At that time, he used the I formation in his offensive strategy. He knew that the key player in that formation was the fullback. not the tailback, but the fullback. This position requires an athletic, tough, unselfish player who basically blocks or opens up the hole for the tailback. A constant grind and collisions on each play while not receiving the recognition for his hard work. The running game is dependent on the fullback in that type of formation, which I learned firsthand when I went to Cornell because we ran the same formation and another individual was a tailback. And I'll tell you what, the two individuals in front of him, Dick Stordo and Bobby Yale, were just incredible in terms of what they did. But Coach Davis knew that Mike was the key to his success. His unselfish dedication and relentless focus on performance cleared the way for the tailback in such an amazing way that the tailback earned All-American honors. Without Mike, that would have not been possible. I know I was a tailback. After carrying the ball 30 to 50 times a game and getting a bit dazed at times, it was reassuring that I knew I could count on him. Mike used to come into the huddle and tell me, "Just follow me, we've got this." As if this constant pounding he took while blocking wasn't enough, he also played defensive linebacker. And at Cornell, as freshmen, we roomed together, and Mike and I played freshman football because we couldn't play varsity. It was part of the Ivy League stipulation. Although he won't admit it, he was a solid contributor on that team. During his sophomore year, Mike reinvented himself by playing the 150-pound football, 150 pounds. He had to make weight every week, 150 pounds, to be eligible to play. It's no easy task to compete on the field while maintaining your weight at 150 pounds. I felt bad eating meatball Parmesan subs in front of him, but it was typical of his focus and determination to compete. He would run the steps of Schokhoff. I'm not sure how many are familiar, but he would run those steps of Schokhoff 3-4 times a week just to maintain the weight. And as the 150-pound football team wasn't grueling enough, Mike also joined the crew team at Cornell. Once again, he experienced extremely challenging practices while maintaining a required weight. As I've stated, I've been away from Seneca Falls for quite some time, but when I reflect on Mike's contributions to the community, his accomplishments in the New York State Senate, his work ethic, focus, passion, unselfishness, in my opinion, it'll be a long time before this area will ever see someone so devoted and committed to serving the public as Mike Nozzolio. And I want to tell you, Mike, Anna and Albert Nozzolio, looking down, are very proud of you. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you a 2015 Minders Academy Athletic Hall of Fame inductee, the Honorable Senator Michael Francis Nozzolio.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's with great honor and humility and gratitude that I stand before you this evening, and my special thanks to the Minders Academy Sports Hall of Fame. You volunteer your time and effort. Rod mentioned it, but I think it can't be repeated enough. By chronicling the sports history of our community, you chronicle the history of our community and all that is good about Seneca Falls. My special thanks to Dom Paradise for not putting my name in nomination to the hall. Coach Paradise has always been an inspiration to me. They still talk about him in Auburn. They love him in Seneca Falls. He's an excellent teacher, educator, coach, public servant. He's been a mentor to me, and I am admiring his community service, and I thank Deco. I can't see him in the audience, but let's give Deco Paradise a round of applause for all he has done. Thank you, Deco. Congratulations to this year's inductees. Steve and John, your comments about, we never called him Pete, Mr. DeBatis, were very telling. Your sister reminded me of a time when I spoke at a hospital, and Pete was there, Mr. DeBatis was there, and it was such an emotional time for me because he gave so much to our community. I'm honored to be named in the same class as Mr. DeBatis. Thank you very, very much. Congratulations to the sports inductees. Many of you were teammates, certainly lifelong friends as well, and that I congratulate you for your athletic ability and for recognition of that ability. A couple of years ago, Mark Piscatelli was inducted, and that I want to thank him as I had the honor of telling people about his accomplishments. For him to stand here and talk about mine means so much. Mark, you're a lifelong friend. I treasure that friendship, that your athletic abilities and performance through the years here at school, to be in front of an All-American, to be blocking on that same team, to be part of it, was something I will never forget. Going to Cornell with you after being such a star here in Seneca Falls, I saw when we went to college together how hard you worked, how much the principles of Emily and Mike are in you, and that I'm so pleased to be your friend. Thank you, Mark. Congratulations for being in the hall and also for your accomplishments through life. Mark and I were born in the same year, the same place, the Seneca Falls Hospital, 11 days apart. So we talk about our birthdays each year in a humorous way. We recognize and let each other know it's another year has gone by and happy birthday. This year, Mark, in his usual humorous way, called and said happy birthday, and by the way, I may need a knee operation. And he let me know that his doctor informed Mark that this medical procedure could have been avoided if only Nizolio had blocked better for you. It's also great to see some former classmates and teammates. Fran Parado, Paul Cronenwetter, been great guys and wonderful friends. Thank you for coming tonight. I took the liberty of inviting some of our contemporaries who themselves were very distinguished in athletics across the Finger Lakes region. Some of you played against Dick Rosinko when he single-handedly, playing for Mount Carmel, beat us at Minders, scoring 3 touchdowns. Dick went on to Arizona State. He was an All-American high school player like Mark, and then went to Arizona State. He made his career in teaching in our region, and Dick Rosinko and his wife Joan are here, and thank you, Dick, for being here and for your contributions. There was a running back from Clyde who we played against as sophomores, and that Steve Ritter and others that are here tonight were seniors and same classmates. Clyde was always a thorn in our side, and Don Vitacor was a running back for Clyde. He went on to become the most winningest football coach in Section 5 for Red Jacket. It's a Shortsville, Manchester area. Don Vitacor's still coaching. He's here tonight. Thank you, Dom. He's with his wife, Mary Ann. Congratulations, Coach. It was nice to play against you. It's a shame you beat us. My special thanks to Dave Herbst, who owns and manages 2 baseball teams in the New York Collegiate Baseball League. He's groomed a number of players through his career, and Dave is with us this evening. Also, I've invited Jigs Petrucci, an icon in Seneca Falls, to be here tonight. All of you know Jigs. He's of the greatest generation, a World War II veteran, a Purple Heart recipient. He's north of 85 years old, and that I only aspire to shoot his age because Jigs in golf, because Jigs always shoots my age. Jigs Petrucci, congratulations for everything you've done for the Seneca Falls community. Lastly, Ray Cingolini is here with his wife Patty. Ray has worked with me to help changing the regulations and the laws regarding head injury and working to prevent head injury for those high school scholastic athletes. And that Ray, who is a former boxer, has dedicated his life to this. He's from Geneva, a former star athlete there, a great boxer, but working so assiduously to ensure that head injury is focused on. And Ray, thank you for being here tonight as well. Most importantly, I want to thank my wife Rosemary, herself a former Minders Academy cheerleader and class salutatorian, as well as my mother-in-law Millie, who wasn't quite old enough to play against the Minders basketball team, but she herself played for the Romulus girls basketball team in the 1930s. Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, Millie, for being here with us. Lastly, I just want to say how great it was to grow up in Seneca Falls. We were fortunate. Every day was a sports day for us, from Little League baseball to football to countless pickup games, from playing in the backyard to the Knights of Columbus fields. Whatever fields we could find, we played on with pickup games, from basketball at the rec center from 6th grade on to high school sports. It mattered not who your families were or where they lived. What did matter was how you represented our team and how much effort you gave and what quality of teammate you were. That's the beauty of our community. That's the beauty of sports in our community. And that's what makes Seneca Falls such a wonderful place. It's clear to me that I certainly was never as accomplished an athlete as those recognized, but I know this, that I would not have accomplished whatever I have in life if it wasn't for athletics, for the athletic opportunities that were provided by our parents, that generation, the community at large, in recognizing the importance of athletic endeavor. And that certainly is something that I'm extremely grateful for. Work hard as a senator to ensure that those opportunities are provided to other students across this region. One very last thought. I want to comment about what Rod said earlier, particularly since the 1965-66 wrestling team is being honored. That was a year that I was a freshman. We were freshmen. I just completed JV football under Coach Abe Myers, and then playing JV basketball. I was a teammate at Ted's. That I remember going many times to the wrestling matches. That was a fun thing to do, something we did as students to support. And I vividly recall one match where a particular Minders wrestler displayed particular strength, extraordinary swiftness and agility, and he won a very exciting individual match that proved to be the linchpin in the team's victory. I didn't know that wrestler personally. He was a senior. I was a freshman. But I lost track of him after graduation from Minders, although it was about 3 years later that I did see him again, briefly, in Seneca Falls at the annual Memorial Day services then held at the Restvale Cemetery on East Barrett Street. He was seated in the back of the Red Jacket Fire Department rescue truck that served as the rostrum for the event. It was a challenge for him to stand, and he was recognized for his military service in Vietnam. I've not crossed paths with him since then, but I carried those thoughts of a Minders wrestler, swift, agile, and strong, with the thought of the Vietnam veteran who returned home, a wounded warrior. And I carried that image in each of the over 100 Memorial Day speeches and Veterans Day ceremonies that I've been linked to and participate in as a state representative. Our nation can never adequately thank those who have served us. We all know the many former Minders Academy athletes who served with great distinction. Soldiers like Colonels Buchwald and Carasillo. Captains in the Navy like Joe Aviduti. And one of our classmates of Mark and I and Franz, who was a football teammate, Danny Merkel, lost his life in Vietnam. But the Minders wrestler I'm referring to volunteered for service in the Marine Corps, served in battle zones, and received significant life-threatening wounds. There were no Wounded Warrior programs when he first came home, but I'm happy he is here tonight and honored to share this evening with him. Please, as a Seneca Falls community, take the time to welcome home a great American patriot and a genuine American hero. His name was Aga then, but he goes by Dan now, Dan Hansen. Let's all thank him for his service as a patriot and American hero. Dan Hansen.
Mark. Could you present that to him? Sure. Next on our list, David Baker is presenting for Lindsay Gortham Cornu. David Baker is a Hall of Fame member himself. Oh, what'd I do? Oh, I did. Thank you. Wait a minute. I got it now. And believe me, that probably won't be the only mistake I make, so. But George, I apologize to you. It's a little past my bedtime, so. Okay, I'm back on the page I think I should be on. And we're going to do Mr. George Capacci, and this is really insulting. The guy came all the way from Washington, and I screwed this up on him. Catherine Capacci Peterson will speak for him. Thanks for catching me.
Not that I didn't want to do it, but, I'd like to stand chance. We don't want to do a do-over. Okay, here we go. As he said, I'm Catherine Peterson, but I was a Capacci, Kitty Peterson, and I am one of George's 6 other siblings, and I'm here to introduce George as an inductee for the Athletic Minders Academy Hall of Fame. But before I start, I bet all these inductees never woke up once and said, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to become this, or I'm going to go here, or do that. I think that each one of these inductees were given a talent, a brains, drive, or some other gift, and they actually used it to become who they are and the place where they're planted to be a better place in the world. So I'm going to tell stories of George when he grew up. There's wonderful things in the program about his accomplishments and his goals, but I'm going to tell stuff that's not in the program. But don't worry, it's all good stuff. First off, George and we all had great role models. Our mother and father were wonderful people. They were very involved in the church, in their community, and their family. They were great examples, and they held the bar high for us. And George, as the oldest of the 7 kids, he had to hold the bar high for us. Like DeBatis, we slipped a little, but then we would get up. But we knew where the bar was. So they supported us in everything we did. For instance, when George was in middle school, or maybe high school, he became a trapper. Now, I remember my uncle, Charlie Bonkowski, and my father sitting around the table talking about Connie Bear traps and trapping the muskrats and stuff like that. And George probably said, I probably could do that. So Charlie lent him some traps. My father dragged him down to Suckerbrook, and he showed him where to go and how to set him up and stuff like that. And George was on his own. Now, listen, you do not trap in the summertime. When it's warm and it's easy to find the traps and the sun is out all the time, you trap in the winter. It's cold, it's wet, it's hard to find the traps. It's hard to find the animals sometimes once they get caught. But so George had to get up early before school started, take the traps, reset them if there was animals in them, had to come back, skin the animals, and reset the traps. So I think the things he learned in this activity carried over into the wrestling mat and the athletic field. Track, that's right, track. So nobody's out there when you're on the wrestling, right, guys? There's nobody out there helping you shoot or pull in when you're trying to pin somebody. Nobody's out on that track field when you're trying to throw the discus. So this activity helped him as an individual become stronger by himself on the track and the wrestling mat. Next was his hunting skills. As soon as he could shoot a gun, got his license, he was out there with my Uncle Adolph, Uncle Pat, Shooter Lama, my father, and they went out and did their hunting. I'll tell you what, we had some good pheasant in polenta in the fall because they always did the job. So this activity, the gentlemen and young boys, they had to clean their guns, practice with the other hunters. They had to practice shooting. They had to work with the dog, and of course they had to be respectful for the other guys in the hunting team. So this carried over into his football. You have to practice, you have to work with a team, and you have to be ready and respectful for the rest of the team. So then you got academics. George never had any problems with academics. I still can't beat him on Words with Friends. I tell you what. I even look up on Word Scrambler to try and figure out if I can get more points. I still can't beat him. But anyway, he did things in life that would force his brain, push that limit and stuff like that. So he built a hydroplane, and it was a one-seater that would skim across, of course, hydroplane over the water. And this he did in high school. He got the blueprints. He got the wood, he had to stretch the wood, he had to fiberglass it, he had to cut the right angles, who would have thought algebra and geometry could actually work in your lifetime? Well, this activity, I think, was one of the things that he did to increase his academics. And then you have his personality. George was always the glass is half full. Okay, got that from our mother and father, half full, don't worry about it. So to strengthen this kind of a trait, when he was in Arlington, Virginia, he had a beautiful blue Firebird. Well, it got stolen. And when the cops found it, there was nothing left. No wheels, no doors, no seats, no steering wheel, no dashboard, nothing. And George was like, well, nobody got hurt. That's what you have insurance for. Not once did I hear a derogatory statement or any kind of swear words toward the people who took his vehicle and destroyed it. He just said some of the things that were in there, the personal effects, were not being able to be replaced. So that meant a lot to me. I said, I would be swearing like a trooper if someone took my vehicle, that, you know, something that's very important, anyway, glasses half full. So that situation, I think, was one of the situations that helped him deal as a captain in the Coast Guard. His ship was the first ship that came on the Valdez, that big spill in Alaska. And I remember George coming home saying, well, you know, the guy tried to say that it was the Coast Guard's fault. I opened up my books and said, we did those buoys yesterday. So, you know, he was just like, okay, let's tell the facts. But anyway, in conclusion, I can say when George would come home, of course it was special because George was, a special in our family. So my mother used to cook up a friggin' storm. I swear the poor kid went back to where he came from 10 pounds heavier than he came. But anyway, it was nice. We always used to say, George is coming home, we're gonna kill the fatted cow. And so anyway, but it was good. It was all good. It was well worth it. And as my brothers and sisters will attest to this, the special dessert that came out was called pineapple icebox cake. We got it only when George came home. I don't think he realized this, but those ingredients were only bought when George came home. And so we were like, oh, good, we're going to eat good and we're going to have a great dessert. So anyway, it was worth it. And George was worth it. And so tonight is a pineapple upside down, a pineapple icebox cake, because you're worth it, George. And congratulations. May I introduce to you my brother, George Albert Capacci. Oh, okay. Now?
Pictures now.
Pretty nice. You didn't want to forget, that's why. Thank you. Take that down.
You can set it right underneath.
Okay, right. Keep an eye on him. Make sure he stays on the.
Oh, dear. Hey, Kitty.
I took your notes.
Keep an eye on her. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Kitty. Thank you very much to the Minders Academy Alumni Association, particularly to the Athletic Hall of Fame for this honor, for my selection. I am humbled and I am honored by this selection. I think I'm not worthy for this. I would just as soon sit down and let honor our veterans even more because of the great things that you all have done. You don't know how frightened I was to pick my sister to introduce me because I think everybody knows Kitty she had a lot of other stories she could have talked about and didn't. So I thank you for that, and icebox cake for you, dear. So it's a little daunting to go first. John told me and Rod told me it was going to be alphabetical, and I think about, if you look in my program, Otto Graham was my head football coach when I was a senior at the Coast Guard Academy. They couldn't find a coach, and Otto says, I'll do it. Well, how hard can it be? And so Otto came back, and I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from all the coaches that I've worked with, and I'll talk to you about them in a second. But when I was this alphabetical story, as a senior, I was co-captain of the football team. And a couple times a year during our season, the captains and the coach would go to a sports writers luncheon. And we would meet at some university in New England, and because the Coast Guard Academy is in London, Connecticut. I have to keep telling people that. But Otto grabbed Barry Harner, who was the quarterback, and myself out of class, I don't know, studying physics or calculus or something that algebra is worthful, but Those other things, I don't know if I've used many of them. But still, he grabbed us out of class. We had to jet off to somewhere, drive off to somewhere for a sports writers convention. And we get into the luncheon there, and we were late, obviously. Just traffic, even back in the 70s, was pretty horrendous. And Otto was, well, I'll leave a story about his driving later. But so we showed up a little late, and Otto liked his groceries. I mean, he was a great quarterback. He was a great gentleman. I could tell some other stories about him, but I don't have time. But so he grabbed a whole plate through the buffet, and he sat down, and he started eating as quickly as he could because he did like his groceries. And he said, and so the MC just then got up to the stage, and he said, okay, we're going to start now. We're going to get team reports, and we're going to talk about what, your last week's game and next week's game. He says, and we'll start alphabetically. And he says, and start with the Coast Guard Academy. And Otto, not missing a beat, he's eating, and he goes, that's U.S. Coast Guard Academy. Start with Colby. He was quick, I tell you. He was very sharp. He was very quick. And I learned a lot from Otto. When we think about sports, when I think about sports, I think about my first team. And that's Team Capaci. Kitty talked about it. Albert and Margaret. Albert's doing very well, by the way. He couldn't make it here. He's 91 years old, but he said the legs go first. So he's not as mobile, and he just did. And Otto said the same thing, by the way, as he knocked me down with a pass. But my dad is doing well, but Albert and Margaret were our coaches. My aunts and uncles and my cousins were the assistant coaches. They set a framework for us. They gave us guidelines and helped us start on that foundation of our life. One of the biggest rules, or one of the biggest things that went through our minds, and the question that I think my father said to us once, what would Grandma think? So before you ever did anything, you ran it through this litmus test. What would Grandma say? Oh, geez, I better not do that. I better not wound somebody, or at least get caught. Anyways, but so that was Team Capaci, and my first string is here today. All my brothers and sisters are here. Getting us all in the room at one place at one time is tremendous. But Mary Suffredini and Kitty Peterson, we know, and her husband Bob, and Teresa Clark and her husband Dave, and Carol Wood and her husband Stuart, Joe and Shelley Capaci are here, and my brother Jim and Alice are here. And that's the first string. Those are the people that I learned through as growing up. Kitty says I was the oldest and was away, and so after high school I was on my own and the Coast Guard and would come back over the last 44 years. But I figured some of the things she was talking about were going on, because when I came back, so it was a little hushed tone sometime. I would like to acknowledge the second string, or not second string, that's wrong. I got to change that. But my current first team is my immediate family. My darling wife, Kathy, of 35 years. She's put up with me for a long time. And there's a sports connection there, how we started, but that's another story for another time. But Kathy and I have moved all over the world, it seems, and we've raised 4 lovely children. Dr. Christina Capaci Daniel is with me with her husband, Dr. John Furman Daniel. And my second daughter is, she's still here, Kathy? You don't know. But nurse practitioner Natalie Capaci Jones is here. She was a lieutenant in the Navy as a registered nurse and is now out of the Navy and working with the Navy in San Diego. And her husband, Lieutenant Commander Matt Jones, and they are proud parents of our first grandchild, Alexandra Ray Jones. And they're both with me tonight with us to share this special honor. Our 2 other children, Anna and her husband, Brendan Balliet, are out in Portland, Oregon. And our youngest, our son, Andrew, just completed his doctoral program in chemistry at Princeton. And he just started a job in Boston. So they are all four corners of the country. I have to buy stock in airlines now that I have grandchildren that we need to keep us moving along. So I want to talk for just a little bit about what sports mean to me. And when I look back, and I told you that I've been coming back to Seneca Falls for the past 44 years, the sports part of my life was interwoven into everything I did. It was part of the fabric of my life, the school, home, community, faith. It was just what I did. That's what I looked forward to. I had the great opportunity to have some fantastic teachers. I can remember most of them, but I can remember every coach I ever had. And I'll tell you, those great coaches provided some lessons and some foundations, both here at Minders and in Seneca Falls in general, that formed a real foundation, a background for my career. Whether it was on the field or on the mat or on the track, Coach Davis, Coach George Davis, you've heard, Coach Abe Myers, and Coach Don Bogart was my track coach, but those gentlemen were incredible motivators, were incredible character builders that we know now how important those coaches are to our life, but to see those gentlemen in the Hall of Fame recognizes the kind of impact that coaches have on young people. It is an incredible influence on every day. I've heard people say I was coachable, which is good, because they used to time me in the 40 with a calendar. I mean, I was not very fast, so I had to be pretty smart, and the coaches helped me think about got to be a little more crafty, got to play the angles, use the leverage. Coach Myers was very good at that and teaching us how to use leverage. And luckily I was a little bit taller, so we had to be a little bit smarter as opposed to speed. The lessons that they taught us that you just didn't put down on paper or see were some of the cooperative teamwork effort, the sportsmanship, and the valuable lessons that they taught us. One of the lessons that I don't think gets mentioned often, but was compassion. They really showed an interest in us as team players, and they took that to heart. I carried that with me as I move on. I kind of liked that team effort. When I moved to the Coast Guard Academy, the whole team concept and the service was there. I fell right into it very quickly, very easily. Team sports. I went to the Coast Guard Academy so I could play a couple sports. I went to other schools, I might only have been able to play one. Looking back on it, my grade point might have suffered a little bit, but nonetheless, it was great to play football and wrestling. And then I tried track, but again, that timing with the calendar just didn't make it. So I picked another genteel sport called rugby, but it was a great opportunity to work at team sports as we moved forward. The lessons that I learned both at the academy, I translated in sports to my career at sea. I spent 20 years in the Coast Guard and 10 years on ships, 5 of them before I met my wife, luckily. But those many years at sea, were driven towards or were based on a team effort. And those jobs that I've had and those sports that I played, trying to get a bunch of people to come together to be more than their individual parts and to accomplish a mission. I mean, you all know, or many of you know, that I spent a lot of time in Alaska and doing some of those rescues up in the Bering Sea before Deadliest Catch was around. I can tell you some stories there. My hair was dark before those, but it was challenging up there, and there was young people that joined the Coast Guard from all over, and to try to get them to understand what we were doing and to train and practice and practice and practice. So when the real thing came up, You know, why are we going in here, Captain? I said, because when the weather gets bad, I may want to duck into this place because it can be pretty rough out there. So we practiced a lot. And so when we were faced with some rough situations, we were able to accomplish those and accomplish them safely and pull people out of the water. And I tell you, there is no more gratifying situation than pulling somebody out of the water who's in a couple hours wouldn't be there. So, and now a little bit more about Seneca Falls here in Minders. Like I said, I've been visiting over the last 40 plus years now, and every time I come back, I get some nostalgic feelings, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I get them in a very positive way. You can't relive, you know, you can't go home again. You can't go back to where you were. But I have a sense of satisfaction, a sense of belonging in this community that is really gratifying and very, very rewarding to me. I heard our daughter Natalie say once, I was born in Alaska, but Seneca Falls is where I'm from. Because this is the place, whenever we moved 6 times in 15 years. And I think 7 or 8, you know, that's about 6 times is a tremendous lot of moving, and it's for a young family. It's real confusing, but she felt a connection, and I think all our children feel a connection to this town because of the foundation that we have here, the connection, the community, and a night like tonight just shows this exactly to me. It is just heartwarming and very humbling for me and very honoring for me to be here. I have to thank Seneca Falls and Minders. You're doing a good job. Keep it up from somebody from the outside, I'll tell you that. So I am very honored again to be selected for this position, to this Hall of Fame. I'd like to thank the Alumni Association, the Athletic Hall of Fame Committee, particularly Rod and my cousin John, for their constant attention. I am a member of the Coast Guard Academy Athletic Hall of Fame, and I have to tell you, the logistics and the coordination for this event was more than that event. So, I mean, this Minders Academy is really shows himself well in this process. It is a tremendous honor. Again, I feel unworthy to be here, but I am honored for this selection. Congratulations to the teams and the individuals that are joining in this class of 2015. It's a real honor for me to be part of this group, particularly the names and the faces of everybody who's here tonight. And in closing, then, I would just like to share this honor with my teammates. There are a lot of teammates. As I look through the yearbook getting ready for this, I look through the yearbook and I see the whole kind of Minders environment, atmosphere. I share it with them. I share this with my extended family, my wonderful extended family, and with my lovely wife, Kathy. So she's put up with me for all these years. I love you, sweetheart. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That was very, very good, George. A couple things. Keep an eye on me, Catherine, okay? Because you're my kind of girl. You're doing good. And just a couple remarks about, George was talking about the doctors in his family. And I went to college most of the 60s, and my dad thought that I was going to be a doctor. It didn't work out. And there's only one other thing that I regret tonight. And for one particular reason. And if you know me well enough, I don't like to lose at anything, and I don't like to make mistakes. And when I make a mistake, I don't like to do it in front of my daughter-in-law, who will tell me about this for the rest of my life. So if you could have a talk with her, maybe. So now, Kathy, if I think we're correct, we're going to go with David Baker, Hall of Fame member. for Lindsay Gotham Cornu.
I'm not going to mess up his book up here. Over the past 30 years, I have been very lucky to have coached many excellent athletes, one of which is Lindsay Gotham Cornu. So when Lindsay asked me to introduce her tonight, it not only brought back memories of her athletic achievements, but I was truly honored. I first met Lindsay when I was coaching her sister, Hillary. Lindsay loved sports, played soccer, basketball, and lacrosse, and there's probably other things that she did that I don't have listed. I was lucky enough to be Lindsay's basketball coach, either directly or indirectly, ever since she was, and I think she corrected me, she was like in 3rd grade. What an experience it was for me. I watched this young girl grow into a confident, caring woman. Even though I only coached her in basketball, I watched her play all sports with the same passion, all-out hustle, and determination. Whether she was on a field or a court, you had to isolate on her because she never stopped, always making something positive happen, either offensively or defensively. She would get more intense when things weren't going her way, sometimes not knowing to give herself a break. Lindsay only knew how to play one way, and that was all out. But at the same time, always positive and sportsmanlike with opposing players, always putting a hand down to help someone up if they fell, or many times when she knocked them down. When sportsmanship awards were given out, it was usually Lindsay that was given the trophy. Lindsay was a team leader and highly respected by her fellow players. Many of the younger players looked up to her, and she would take the time to help them become better athletes. She truly was a role model. When Lindsay was a freshman, I was fortunate to coach her on the JV basketball team. The team went undefeated that year. I still have my t-shirt. Lindsay, do you have yours? I never wanted to wear it. After basketball season, I tried to get Lindsay to play softball. I was also the JV softball coach. I think I was dreaming because I knew, before even asking, that it wasn't going to happen because of her love for lacrosse. As you can see from her bio, she made the right decision. Lindsay was a pleasure to coach with an exceptional work ethic as demonstrated from her success in both athletics and academics. She is and always will be special to me. Thank you for the memories, Lindsay. At this time, I would ask Lindsay to come forward. Lindsay Gotham Cornu, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. So much of who I am today is because of the support that you have given to me, the lessons that you taught, your kindness and guidance built a core of confidence inside of me that has allowed me to stand here today and achieve on and off the field in my life. You have given so much of your life to so many others and to this community, so thank you. Thank you to the Alumni Association, the Minders Academy Athletic Department, the Hall of Fame Committee, and everyone present today, especially my ever-supportive family and in-laws. And congratulations to all the other inductees. I truly am so honored and still can't wrap my head around the fact that I can be held in the same regard as all of you. You don't understand what this honor means to me. It is an acknowledgement of a lot of hurdles that I have had to jump over in my life, an acknowledgement of the perseverance, the many shifts in mindsets that I have had to struggle with. Learning to measure success differently, learning to accept different rules, learning to transfer strengths, swallowing pride, digesting it, and growing was always uncomfortable. It was always an uncomfortable experience, but the support and people around were always there to pick me up, dust me off, and push me forward. These lifelong lessons I am so incredibly thankful for. After 5 knee surgeries, this acknowledgement means more than you'll ever know. That being said, if you wouldn't mind allowing me some time to thank some individuals, while my name may be on this award, this honor must be shared with so many others. In college, in one of my women's studies classes, we were asked to write an autobiographical paper, exploring our life's experiences with gender inequalities. As other students presented their papers, I began to see how blessed and appreciative I was for this community that I grew up in. Most other girls shared that they felt oppression at a young age and were not awarded opportunities simply because of their gender. The story I shared was one of endless opportunities athletically. I never felt as though I was a girl while I was playing sports. I was asked to try out for the boys' rec all-star team when I was in 5th grade. When I found softball to be slightly boring, sorry, Mr. Baker, I was able to play baseball and no one batted an eyelash. In 7th grade, during the winter, I was literally on 3 different basketball teams and an indoor soccer team. And all of them I was able to play on for free. Perhaps this was because I grew up a couple streets away from where Elizabeth Cady Stanton once lived. And as a town, we kind of celebrate that kind of thing. But I think it was something much more special than that. Special people like Mr. Baker, Mr. Rushak, Mr. Drexler, Mr. Sanderson, and my father, as well as many, many, many others who gave so much of their time and so much of themselves for this community. This community created a foundation for me and others to go on to be successful both on and off the field. To this unbelievably unique and incredible community, I give my deepest expression of gratitude. Thank you to my teammates. Because of this community and those coaches that I mentioned earlier, and the fact that we all grew up together playing all of these sports for probably about 7 years, we were a family that spent many hours bonding in Mr. Baker's conversion van. And they are friendships that I still have today. A bond so strong that we knew each other like the back of our hands and truly overachieved on the soccer field, lacrosse field, and basketball court. Lastly, to my family. My sister, who I looked up to, who I chased around the yard to get faster and chased through life to become better and more like her. Sorry. Who I watched in awe playing multiple sports in college and couldn't wait to hopefully be like her and play as well. My brother, who was always willing to play catch or kick and who was mighty brave using his baseball glove while I was learning to throw and catch with the lacrosse ball. Man, what an athlete you were. There was nothing greater than watching you in the stands wearing at first blue and white and then purple and gold, just like me. Thank you for traveling all the way from California to be here tonight. To my mother, whose heart is so big, I'm not sure how it fits inside of her chest. For driving and cheering and supporting, and mostly for loving unconditionally. My parents somehow, some way, while working full-time jobs, and having at one point in time 2 kids playing multiple sports in college and 1 playing in high school, at least one of them was at every single one of our games. No matter the city, the state, the day of the week, or the time of the game. I may be biased, but there really couldn't be any more supportive parents on this planet. Mom, thanks for all the hugs and the good games and the trips to the hospital, to the doctor's office, and a shoulder to cry on. And lastly, to my father, to whom I truly owe this honor. I don't even know where to begin. And as I've gotten older, I'm able to reflect, but not yet quite comprehend, how you were able to give so much to me, to Hillary, to Troy, and to our family. Your job was never easy. I remember you working nights, working long hours, working overtime, and you still chose to give to us and to this community your time, coaching us. You coached me in every sport. You taught me how to play, but mostly you taught, but more importantly, you somehow taught me something that I've always been told can't be taught. You inspired a work ethic inside of me that could not be beat. People always admired me for my work ethic, and that was because of you, Dad. You inspired something that has allowed me to achieve all of this, despite my injuries and all the setbacks that I'd faced. I remember when I was a freshman at Nazareth, during our fall season, being the worst lacrosse player on the field. I had absolutely no left hand, and my nerves seemed to mess up most passing drills. My coach called me into her office for my mid-fall evaluation, and she told me, she literally said, "I don't know what to do with you." She thought about putting me in goal, and I'm really glad she didn't. My work ethic had her wanting to find a spot for me badly, but she was truly worried about my stick skills. That is likely why I ended up on defense. But I accepted that challenge and tapped into my inner Danny Gotham and improved my stick skills exponentially. My confidence never wavered, though, because I knew that there would be no one on the field that would outwork me. It's always something in my control. And for you, Dad, I thank you for this wonderful gift. Thank you.
I was talking to Lindsay earlier, and I found out when she was setting up her stuff for the memorabilia that she was the girl in 4th grade that used to send notes to my son who was playing varsity basketball at that time. Good notes. They were good notes. And it's amazing, but we have those notes still in my son's memorabilia box at home. So they were well-spent effort to get those things there. I mean, I'm not sure my son wanted me to say that, but okay, at this time we have Paul Sandroni coming up, and he's going to present and accept for Dr. Lee Letizia.
This is rather new for me, but good evening, everybody. It's unfortunate that Lee's children couldn't be here in the family. Recently, his son Joseph passed away, and they were here recently for a memorial service. Being that they're from different parts of the country, couldn't find a way to get back. But I know there's some families, some members of Lee's extended family out there that are glad that he is into the Hall of Fame. It is my pleasure to accept this wonderful award, which is being bestowed upon Dr. Letizia, Lee Letizia, on behalf of Lee and his family. I will not review all the accomplishments that are listed in the program. However, it is obvious that anyone reviewing the accomplishments that Lee was truly a man of all seasons. It's kind of bright. There you go. In addition to his stellar athletic career, both at Miners Academy and at Hobart College, Lee was a leader and an outstanding academic student throughout his lifetime. Lee served the Syracuse community for many years as an accomplished professional dentist. Simply put, whatever Lee did, he did well. Lee would serve as a model to our young people in that he had a singular purpose of excelling at any undertaking. He would strive for excellence athletically, academically, and professionally. His energy knew no limits, and he accepted nothing but excellence in whatever he did. I know that if Lee were alive, he would accept this award with great modesty. This was also one of his benchmarks that he had in his life. I will close by thanking the committee, who I think do an excellent job in the class act. I've been to a couple other college and high school Hall of Fame or similar functions. This truly is a great event. I personally believe Lee richly deserved this award, and I want to thank you for your kindness. Thank you.
Dr. Letizia was indeed an outstanding and unusual athlete. If you read his bio, and he's got a lot of good stuff in there, this guy played 3 sports for 4 years in college and came out a dentist. That's like impossible. But he really was a good athlete and deserves to be in our Hall of Fame. And thanks to Paulie for accepting for him. Next, we have Mark Sharman presenting for Jeff Manning. You may know him as Mark, but we know him as Prime Time, Mr. Wonderful, or The Shark.
What an intro. Thanks, buddy. Good job. I'm holding up, all right? Thanks, Rod. That was dubious at best, I think. This is a great night and a happy night, and a great honor for me. I thought I knew a lot about Minders athletics, but in preparing for tonight, even just this few minutes I'm up here, it's amazing what I had learned. And I have to congratulate a great friend of mine, a mentor, a leader, a brother, Mike Nazzolio. And when he introduced you, Mark, he mentioned our Uncle Joe Komarniski, who was part of, I believe it was the 1939 team that was undefeated and unscored upon. And I think, Mike, your words that night were, he always heard about that his whole life. Well, I heard about it in stereo because I heard it from Uncle Joe, I heard it from Mike, I heard it from his brothers Matt and Joe, and it's quite an honor to be up here with such an august group. But I got the sincere pleasure. My primary mission, obviously, is not to reminisce. It's to introduce my great friend and teammate, Jeff Manning, who played so many football and basketball games with me and so many practices, as a 2015 inductee into the Minders Athletic Hall of Fame. And I couldn't be more touched and pleased and honored, Jeff, for your friendship and your allowing me to do this tonight. But Jeff and I have had a lot of good times together, a lot of good times. And the best times for me were in the 1974, 75, and 76 Minders varsity football teams when Jeff played center, anchored the line for 3 years in that role. And I had the honor to be quarterback I was a backup to John DeBatis in 1974 as a sophomore, and I was able to start in 1975 and 1976 and had probably the longest history of Jeff's posterior than probably anybody. I don't know where to put that. Burke, that might be one of my monikers too. But in those games, with Jeff leading the outstanding play up front, our teams won almost 80% of our games in 3 years. The blocking was so good, we consistently led as a team the Wayne Finger Lakes East in yards gained, yards per carry, and I'm happy to say overall pass blocking as well. So I don't know where you were 40 years ago today, but I can tell you where Jeff and I were. It was October 11th, 1975, and Jeff and I, along with our teammates, were celebrating a hard-fought victory over Penn Yan by a score of 14-2. It was in Penn Yan, not a great place for teams to go, either whatever level you were at, freshman, JV, varsity, but we managed to pull it out. And Jeff played great that day, and I always had the best view as quarterback to see not only Jeff's great play, but all of our linemen. And I can attest to just block after block was solid. But on that day, I was singled out, me as the quarterback, for my unique ability to score points. And I have to share with you just briefly a short article. And I don't know if anybody, I mentioned Mike is a member of my family, but if anybody remembers my mom, Rose Komarniski-Sharman, if nothing else, she was detailed-oriented to a fault. But she would find every article. Coach Ted Novak, he's the historian, but Coach, I think you could take a lesson from my mom. She found every box score, everything, not only about me, but about Jeff or about any of my friends and teammates. But I want to just read this very quickly. It's from a publication. I found it after my mother passed. I never saw it. We were talking earlier about how many news outlets would cover Minder sports, and you think of the Finger Lakes Times, but it's the Post-Standard, it's the Canandaigua Messenger, it's the Auburn Citizen, and some of the smaller county papers. I think this one was from Yates County. But just to quote briefly, in a battle of unbeatens, Minders ground out a hard-fought victory against the Penn Yan Mustangs to move to 5-0 in sole possession of first place in the Wayne Finger Lakes East. The victory was earned behind solid run and pass blocking by the Minders offensive line as the Blue Devils scored touchdowns in the first and third quarters. Now the good part. On a third down, and this is a quote, on a third down and long play during the second quarter, Minders quarterback Mark Sharman was tackled in the Blue Devils end zone for Penn Yan's only points of the day. So my mom showed me that, and I hadn't seen it until after she passed in '98. But I remember her showing this to me and saying, "Well, I said, Mom, that's not a good thing. That's not." And she said, "Well, but they mentioned your name." So anyway, that's what moms do. But I want to move this along, and I do want to mention a number of distinctions that Jeff has had as a player and a Hall of Fame inductee. He received All-League, All-Conference, All-State, and All-American honors for football. But I think he's maybe the only inductee and maybe the only person in Minders sports history. That's a broad statement. I want to make sure I'm right. But he also received All-League and All-Conference honors for lacrosse. So to have those honors for football and lacrosse is a great thing. He's one of 3 interior linemen to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And he's the only center. So I think it's a great theme given what we did that day in Penn Yan. It's a good testament to the great line play. He's the 4th player in the Hall of Fame, inducted as a player from an Ivy League school. Bob Buchwald, Mark Piscatelli, and my teammate from the 1976 season, Gary Bullis, who was great to see here tonight. Gary was such a great part of that team as a sophomore. So that's a terrific thing, but Jeff is the only one inducted from Yale, where he went on to play, as you all know. And really quite a great distinction, which is a fascinating thing to hear about when you talk to Jeff, is the 2 Ivy League championship football teams he played on in 1979 and 1980. And he continues his work with the Ivy League Football Association as a member of the board of directors today. So he's not only involved as a player, but he continues that work. But today, I mentioned today's a celebration, and it's a proud day, not only for certainly me and Jeff, but for our whole class in 1977. We have another member in the Hall of Fame, Karen Laux, and Karen was a great athlete, and Jeff is our next member. But we also, I mentioned the great line play, and Jeff will have a lot to say, I'm sure, about these other teammates, but in the audience today is Bruce Baker, who played on the 1976 team with us. He was a right guard. He was the president of our class in 1977. Bruce, I think you're probably out there. If you stand up and say, acknowledge yourself, there's Buzzy up there. And Barry Warwick, who played left tackle, he's here tonight too. And with Bruce, he was great. Barry, great to see you here tonight. Rounding out that front four was senior Mike Bertzel. Couldn't be with us tonight. Wanted to be. He's a traveling sophomore. Al Rescorl at right tackle, and the tight end for that 1976 season was Dana Dixon. He played that role as a junior, and I can tell you he was a great athlete. Dana left us a few years ago, but someone who deserves the kind of attention we're giving everybody else here tonight as inductees, I believe. He was also a great target. He was always open on the drag pattern over the middle. I'm going to wind this up, but other people here that deserve recognition, and Jeff, I'm sure, will talk about them. Jeff's coaches, Coach Jack Daniels is here. Coach Daniels is back in Geneva, came down to be here. He took over in 1974 after a pretty tough 73 Minders season. Went 2-6 in 73, and in 1974 we were 8-1 on the brink of Wayne Finger Lakes East Championship, but we had just stumbled our toe at the last undefeated team against Waterloo. And Coach was 3 points away in 1975 from an undefeated season, 1 point loss, I believe, at Lionsburg, and a controversial 2-pointer to Waterloo, but where we would have, I think, been number one in the state. Coach Nicholson, Coach Novak, Jeff and I played for them in the first sectional championship games. We were support players on that first 75 team. Coach Nicholson brought us up as sophomores, but first victory in 101 years for Minders as a sectional champion. It was terrific. Jeff's other accomplishments at Minders, just a couple of listing. He was much more than just an athlete. He was a member of the National Honor Society. He received the Gould Award as the Outstanding Senior Boy in 1977, and he graduated number 12. That may not sound like, certainly not number one, but he graduated number 12 out of 212, and that was the largest single Minders graduation class, I believe, before or since. So quite an accomplishment there. And of the National Honor Society recipients that year, I think Jeff was one of 2 boys that were there. I'm not sure who the other one was, but I know that is it. And then he also had leading roles in all the school plays. I mean, all of the school plays. He was in the choral groups and the band groups, saxophone, I think, Jeff, as I recall. And the thing about it is he made them all look easy. It was just amazing. And there was some serious talk about him playing at halftime of the games after he would get done, take off his helmet, potentially go out and actually play at halftime. We wouldn't let him do that. We wouldn't let him get away with it as players, but I mean, he could have done it. After high school and college, Jeff has racked up 30 years of experience in corporate recovery. He's one of the top 100 corporate and business turnaround professionals in the country. He's an author and frequent speaker at university and industry events, notably Columbia University and the Wharton School of Finance at the University of Pennsylvania. Right now, he's managing director of Cohn Resnick's Investment Bank in Baltimore, and his practice is national in scope. The best-known upstate case that Jeff has had, I believe, is most recently, I believe, in 2013, the successful recovery of Greek Peak Mountain Resorts, really a linchpin of tourism and attraction in upstate New York. But in closing, I hope you'll allow me to do this. I really wanted to find a way to connect what we're talking about today, and I wanted to borrow a sentiment from President Kennedy, who just about this time of year in 1963, at a testimonial for the great American poet Robert Frost, said, and I'm quoting President Kennedy, "A nation reveals itself in the men and women it honors, the men and women it remembers." And I don't think it's unfair to say that that also applies to a community in a high school. And I think that's proven out in this legion of honorees that the Hall of Fame has inducted, and that the mission and work that they continue to do. I believe Jeff Manning is the best student athlete our class in 1977 has to offer. And in my view, is exactly the kind of alumni the Hall of Fame should seek to enshrine and remember. He's a Minders athlete who excelled not only on Brockfield and in the Yale Bowl, but also in the classroom, the boardroom, as a son, husband, father, and friend. Jeff is a living, breathing connection to some of the best times of my life and many of my teammates too. And I cherish the memories of our playing days together. I'm fortunate to have shared so many football and basketball games with him as a teammate, and I'm very fortunate to have his friendship today. Therefore, please join me in a round of applause as Jeff comes to the stage to receive his award and induction into the class of 2015 Minders Academy Athletic Hall of Fame.
Well done. Well done. I know time is precious tonight, but permit me to start with a story that happened about a quarter of a mile from this stage 41 years ago. If you played high school basketball at that time in upstate New York, you found your way to the Ken Jones basketball camp, where you played basketball from dawn until dusk. And in that summer leading up to my freshman year in high school, there was a young woman, a fair maiden, in an ice cream truck who found her way to the Ken Jones basketball camp every night at 8 o'clock. Now, this woman was a marketing genius, because not only did she sell her frozen delights, but she wore a halter top with no supporting garments. Thus, every time she delivered a cone, she shared just a glimpse of that vision that warmed the hearts of most 13-year-olds everywhere. And she knew precisely what she was doing, and by the third night, there were 30 guys in front of her truck cheering every time she sold an ice cream cone. So along comes Coach Rod Verke, swinging his keys the way young coaches do, and he surmises what's going on in front of the ice cream truck, so he sends us all into the dorm. A few minutes later, into the dorm comes Coach Verke, huge smile on his face, holding the largest vanilla ice cream cone I'd ever seen. To the members of the Minders Academy Athletic Hall of Fame Committee, the honorees past and present, to the administration, faculty, and staff of Minders Academy, to the broader community of Seneca Falls, and especially to my classmates, my teammates, and most importantly to my magnificent coaches, I thank you for this honor. Minders Academy has a proud heritage of athletic and academic achievement, and to be included in this company is humbling. My life has taken some very interesting turns since leaving Minders, and I have literally sung solos at Carnegie Hall, and yet I'm more excited to be on this stage, standing here with you tonight. Many people deserve my heartfelt thanks for helping me get here, especially my terrific teammates. And please accept my apologies that I can't thank you all, but I do want to thank the teammates who came out. We got about half the 1976 offensive line, and Bruce Baker and Barry Warwick and our teammate Gary Bullis. It's great to see you. And I will thank Mark Sharman by name, who was also a terrific Minders athlete. You know, the relationship between a center and his quarterback is unusual, awkward at times. At least from the point of view where the quarterback has to put his hands. And there are about 15 men on this planet who I think of as I was the center to their quarterback. Now, two of those guys actually went on and got paid later in their career to play football. And two of those fellows are here tonight, John DeBatis and Mark Sharman. I have been blessed with many heroes, and my heroes started at home. My parents, Robert and Dorothy, are here tonight. Bob Manning was sitting in his unmarked patrol car my first season of junior league football when a boy came up and handed him the ball and said, "Dad can't make it tonight, so he said you would run practice." Thus, Bob Manning became a football coach, and he would coach for several years after I'd moved on to high school, eventually becoming the commissioner of the Seneca Falls Junior League football program. And there is a famous family story that when my father took over as commissioner, the equipment was worn out. It was not safe. So Bob Manning went out and bought new equipment, signing a $10,000 personal note for helmets, shoulder pads, the works. And since his salary at the time when the New York State Police was about $16,000, it was a pretty brave move. And that's a life lesson. Don't be afraid to take risks for a good cause. I also thank my mother, Dorothy, who came to the Elizabeth Cady Stanton School as a teacher's aide in a library with 1,200 volumes. And by the time of her retirement, she had built up the Joseph A. Campbell Media Center into over 35,000 circulation units. Mother Manning expected a certain level of toughness from her kids. And I recall once, my junior season, while I was gasping for air, Al Henry standing next to me after taking a lacrosse ball to the privates, I heard my mother's sweet voice ringing across the field saying, "Get up, Jeff, you wanted to play the game." Those words, too, are a life lesson, especially if you want to pursue a Wall Street career. Sister Pamela is also here tonight, an athletic standout on her own right. Minders 81. Her senior soccer season was the first time that John Nicholson coached a girls' team. And at the time, Coach Nicholson told my parents that he had never seen a team with such high spirit despite such low athletic skills. And kudos to Coach Nicholson, because 3 years later, he had that team winning the state championships. My athletic career began when they kept this hopelessly clumsy kid on the 7th and 8th grade basketball team. And from there, from the next several seasons, I led the league in missed layups. Sophomore year under Coach John Nicholson, the varsity basketball team won its first Section 5 AA championship team. And the following year, I was in a six-man role on a team that repeated. Now, at the time, there was a luncheon for all Section 5 champions. And days before the event, Coach Nicholson asked if I would be willing to speak as the player representative. Introducing me that day, Coach Nicholson asked, or he said, "Our team is an interesting mix of all kinds of players. It has a number of highly talented athletes, and we have smart players. And now you're going to hear from a very smart player." Well, at the time, I gladly took that left-handed compliment, and I did my thing. And I remember one of the lines from that afternoon. It is the team's secret nickname for Coach Ted Novak, Technical Teddy. A turning point in my life came in the spring of my freshman year when I saw athletic director and Hall of Fame member Dominic Paradise in the hall of the junior high school with Jack Daniels. No, not the Tennessee whiskey, but I suspect there were times. But the young college coach who had just agreed to come to Minders to teach math, coach gym, and take over the head coaching job at Minders Academy football. Now, as luck would have it, I knew Coach Daniels from summer football camps, and most importantly, Coach Daniels knew me. So this miracle happened. Later that summer, I joined Mike Hathaway and Mark Sharman as the three super softs brought up to the Minders varsity football squad. And with that opportunity, my academic reputation and, frankly, my life trajectory changed. I remember opening night against Clyde Savannah like it was yesterday. Brockfield looks great with a turf, and I understand why we did it. But back on that Friday night, the fresh-cut grass was like a carpet, this verdant, wonderful carpet. Mr. Buck's crew had done a terrific job painting the lines brilliantly white, fresh and sharp. I remember the enthusiasm of the cheerleaders and the buzz from the band and the murmur from the crowd. And I remember the sweet smells of September the sausage grilling in the concession stand, and a distinct aroma of cigars. For in the end zone, there was a collection of gentlemen of a certain age, many of them vertically challenged, and nearly all of them follically challenged. Those great fellows from those outstanding George Davis teams watching the current crop. And then that night, pretty much everything Coach Daniels said in worked, and we won, and suddenly Minders Academy football had become relevant again in central New York State. What my hero Jack Daniels brought to Minders was a confidence and a belief that we would always win. We held our team meetings in the science lecture hall, and boy, was that a trip, listening to sweet Sam Dickinson teach physics in the morning, and then jolting Jack Daniels putting in the playbook the following evening. And at one of our first meetings, Jack Daniels said, "Fellas, there's no such thing as a rebuilding year." And during my professional career, I have delivered that line many times, coming into challenging situations. I learned a lot of other lines from Jack Daniels, and not many that I can share with you this evening. But alas, my junior year, Coach Daniels broke my heart and accepted the offensive coordinator job at Colgate, and thus it became my honor to play my senior season under Coach Dave Geithner, when we finally finished the job, defeating the Infidels down the road a bit in Waterloo. Finally, Coach Al Henry was a mentor. His coaching accolades were shared last year. He's a member of the Hall of Fame, but he was also a gifted teacher. I recall one class where I had the honor of playing the fallopian tubes. I was a proud member of Al Henry's lacrosse family, and by the time I made the varsity as a sophomore, Coach Henry's lacrosse teams were giant killers. We had one loss against Geneva in '79, and then we went on a roll, and the Blue Devils did not lose a 5-20 league game for the next 3 seasons. We won 3 consecutive titles, and we went to play those big Rochester schools. They hated to play us because we usually took them to the last minutes of the game. Coach Henry was also wonderfully corny. I remember him reading Rudyard Kipling's poem, If, in the rain before a conference playoff game. If you can keep your head when all others about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, then you know you're a man. That was Coach Henry to a T. On December 16th, 1976, I was at the Frank M. Knight Elementary School gathering holiday sound bites for WSFW, WSFW, FM. When the office gal came running in to breathlessly tell me that the Yale coach was at the high school looking for me. So I rambled over and I met Coach David Kelly, and after about a 15-minute talk, Coach Kelly gave me the application for admission and the Barron's Review Guide on Yale University. And he said, "Jeff, if you apply, you probably won't get in, and if you get in, you probably won't play." Coach Kelly was never one to overpromise and underdeliver. Well, I applied, and Yale invited me for an official football visit, and I fell in love with New Haven. And asking Coach Kelly how I might improve my chances for admission, he suggested that I gather additional letters of recommendation, and thus began a letter-writing campaign rarely seen in Seneca Falls. Peter DeBottis wrote a letter, so did Sam Dickinson, so did John Nicholson, so did Dave Geithner, so did school board members, so did executives from Gould and from Sylvania. In all, over 30 people from this community took the time to write on my behalf. And in April, I got the thick envelope from Yale. Today, I suspect that I rode the coattails of Richard Foote and David Lauder, but for a public high school of Minders size in New York State to get 3 young men admitted to Yale in 3 consecutive years is a remarkable testament to the school's sterling academic reputation. Of course, getting into Yale meant I had to have one more tough call to a hero and a mentor, Coach Jack Daniels, who was pushing hard for Colgate, and I remember that call, "Hell, Archie, if I've got to lose you, I'll lose you to a place like Yale." Now, Minders did a great job preparing me for the classroom, And just a little bit about playing football for at Yale is like being Catholic and going to the Vatican. Walter Camp, Yale class of 1882, is the father of American football. He introduced a number of concepts: the 100-yard field, 11 men per side, 5 men on a line of scrimmage. He named the quarterback, the halfback, the fullback. Legendary coach John Heisman said, "What Washington is to our country, Camp is to American football." The Bulldogs have a legacy that includes 2 Heisman Trophy winners, 100 consensus All-Americans, 2 of whom I played with. There are 28 Yaleys in the College Football Hall of Fame, and although my university will not make the claim, the NCAA officially gives Yale 18 national football championships. That's 11 more than runner-up Alabama. We still had freshman football, and our coach was Harry Jakunski. He played college ball at Fordham with a team known as the 7 Blocks of Granite. He was the co-captain of a team that had Vince Lombardi on it, and Harry Jakunski is in both the College Football and Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame. And the players on my Yale teams were athletically competitive against any school in the nation. We had high school All-Americans, All-State, All-Conference players by the dozen, and yet we were very different. The Sports Information Office noted that the 1980 team had 48 high school captains, 66 members of the National Honor Society, 10 valedictorians, 5 salutatorians, and 14 student body or high school presidents. Playing varsity football for Carm Koza was a great honor, and there are a few men on earth that are better examples of how a gentleman should compete. During my time at Yale, the Bulldogs won 5 championships over 5 years, and it was said at that time that Yale was usually the preseason favorite to win the Ivy title, and the next best team in the Ivies was Yale's second team. We were deep. 5 of my teammates were drafted by the NFL, 7 signed as free agents, and while we could hang with any D1 school in the nation, the Bulldogs also featured 6 national academic All-Americans and 2 Rhodes Scholars. During his 31 seasons at Yale, Carm Koza, who was also in the College Football Hall of Fame, brought the Ivy title back to New Haven 10 times. However, when I heard Coach Koza speak at the 40th anniversary of a very famous 29-29 tie Harvard wins game, someone asked him about his proudest achievement, and he replied that while over 2,000 young men played football for him at Yale, only 7 did not graduate. One final story, and I share it because at this time in my life, everything that I'd learned at Minders and everything that I brought from this community at Seneca Falls came brilliantly together. The game, which is, of course, the Harvard-Yale game, is played on the Saturday before Thanksgiving, and the team dinner follows Monday night. Before the dinner, the team elects next year's captain, and at dinner in a room that's straight out of Harry Potter, the team awards are given and speeches are made. Then the team adjourns to Maury's, a private eating club. You may know the song, "To the tables, not at Maury's, to the place where Louis dwells." Now, the Ivy football trophy is silver, and it weighs about 20 pounds when you take the lid off. And on that night, it was my great honor, with 80 teammates standing around me, cheering and singing to me and the rest of the seniors, I got to drink from the Ivy football trophy cup. And at that moment, as I was turning the page on my college football career, all of you were with me, because the composite of all my experiences were with me. Minders Academy and Seneca Falls, New York, made me the man I was then and makes me the man I am now. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Thank you.
Very nicely done. I thought it was interesting in the introduction there that Mark mentioned he scored 2 points for Penn Yan in football. That was 2 more than he scored during the basketball season. Next, we're going to have Dan Carraher come up and speak.
Good evening. I'm glad Rod didn't tell any stories. I'm very appreciative. First, tonight I'd like to congratulate all the inductees into this year's Hall of Fame. It's a great honor and a privilege for me to be here to introduce Steve Siegfried. Steve, my first encounter with Steve was when he was a 91-pound 8th grader. He was out for the varsity wrestling team and just did a great job for us. Steve was never intimidated by the older wrestlers. We got a couple of them here tonight, Gary Bullis and Dom Carasillo, and they were talking about how, you know, Steve came in and it was just like one of the other guys, you know, not intimidated or anything, and just did a great job and was respected by all the older wrestlers on the team. He soon was winning the majority of his matches, and he won his first sectional title as an 8th grader, and that was the start of his very distinguished career. Steve's mom and dad, Barb and Floyd, and his little brother Scott, they traveled on the road all summers, going to tournaments all over the countryside, and you know, Steve, that was what got him to the level that he attained in high school. Steve was always a very humble wrestler, never showboat, just go out, do his job, get it done, and come back to the team. He was always very congratulatory. Any of his opponents, whether he won or lost, he was always congratulating them, and it was very seldom that he did lose. Steve knew everyone in Section 5. He was like an ambassador, whether from summer wrestling or just being around wrestlers and wherever, he knew everyone. And half the time we would have to drag him back with us to leave. You know, he'd be wanting to talk to all the different wrestlers at the different schools. Hey, Steve, let's go. We got to get home tonight, you know. But Steve was, again, just a great individual to be around. His only loss in sectionals, he won sectionals 4 times in 5 years. His only loss was his junior year. And he lost in the semifinals to a wrestler from Geneva, where his mom was from. But that would have been his 100th victory, and he was defeated in the semifinals. But again, not knowing Steve, not letting down one bit, he came back and wrestled back and took 3rd place, and again went on to the state qualifier that year as a junior also. In Steve's senior year, he was the team leader, always encouraging the other wrestlers, the young kids, and everyone just looked up to him. He won his 4th title his senior year, and in the state qualifiers, Steve never lost his focus at all. He knew that what he had to do when he was going to go to the States in his senior season. In the finals, he defeated a young wrestler, or another wrestler from Letchworth, and the feeling of that victory, for me, was just something that I'll never forget. I can still see Steve come running back to the corner, jumping in my arms, and it was one of the greatest moments that I had as a wrestling coach. He went on to the state tournament and finished 5th in New York State. And again, back in those days, it's a lot different than it is now. Now you have A and B classifications, big school, small school, and Steve wrestled against big schools and small schools and did an excellent job for us. So in finally ending up this, I would just like to say it's my privilege again to introduce Steve Siegfried to this year's Miners Academy Athletic Hall of Fame.
Wasn't supposed to grab that. Thanks, Dan. Well, this is truly an honor. I really thank you so much for this, for the committee, the people all involved in getting this started. You're doing a wonderful job. Like everybody's been saying up here, that's come up here and said that accepted this award. This is truly the most memorable that I could say. I've already received one Hall of Fame award for Section 5, and the reason why I would say this is the most memorable and most honorable, because when you come back to your own hometown and you see the faces out here, you look at the people that are here, and it brings back the memories of what you came from. You never, ever forget where you started from and where you came from. So that's why I feel honored and blessed to have received this, and I thank you for all who are here as well. So, like I said, it's truly an honor for me to be here, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the people that were supporting me, and especially to my parents. Sorry for the emotion. They were always supportive and attended every match and tournaments that I was in. I remember when my mother would come to some of the tournaments in her third term of pregnancy. Some of these tournaments would take more than an hour just to travel to. We were just going all over the states. Like some of the coach said, we were doing national, regional type of travels. And there she would be there in the third term of pregnancy. And as we were driving along to these tournaments, my mother would get kind of agitated by my father because he was too prideful to pull over when she kept egging him on, saying, "Floyd, why don't you just pull over and find out where we're going, because we're going to miss the weigh-ins." So she would be screaming, "Floyd, I told you we should have got up earlier." So anyway, that was part of it. And there was another part where she would always argue about, like I said, leaving the house earlier. And there were times when we literally had less than 5 minutes for me to get to the weigh-ins. And here I am stripping my clothes off as I'm running to the weigh-ins, half naked, trying to make the weigh-ins on time. Thanks, Dad, for getting me there on time. But like I said, the thing that's more important to me, that like I said, no matter how late or how early I got to these weigh-ins, they were always there supporting me in anything that I did as a wrestler. And I like to thank some special people as well here. Mr. Knapp, especially, who I remember there was a time when I qualified for the Grand Nationals, and money was tight, and it was a very expensive flight. We had to fly to Lincoln, Nebraska. And I really wanted to go to the tournament, but I really think I couldn't go because the cost. Well, the Miners Academy Boosters Club and Mr. Knapp all got together and funded for my dad and I to attend the tournament there. And there is where I placed sixth in the nation at this tournament. And that was a blessing to me, and I like to thank for the committee and, like I said, for Bruce Knapp for allowing that to happen. During the summer, I remember this part. I remember during the summer going to some of these tournaments after my mother had finally gave birth to my brother. They were sitting in the bleachers watching, and my dad's sitting with my mother, and then, the bleachers, there's everybody behind them. Well, knowing that my brother just being born put a little nasty smell in his diaper. So what did he do? He cleared out the whole section of the bleachers. And what did my dad do? He runs off. There's my mother sitting with my brother, changing his diapers, and still cheering me on. Thanks, Mom. And thanks, Scott. Yeah, I remember those days. Believe me, it was pretty bad smells. While I was in the 4th grade, I remember moving to Geneva. I moved in with my uncle Eddie, who was a very supportive in me as well in wrestling. There was a long tradition of that family, the Morocco families of wrestlers there. But what got me started and interested in trying out for wrestling, I remember my cousin Tommy would always come up to me, put me in the most peculiar positions I didn't even know, couldn't even imagine what they were. But he kept egging me on about trying to come out for wrestling. And, you know, I just kind of like ignored him, blew him off, and said, no, that's sports for sissies. Little did I know, as he's still putting me in these peculiar moves, trying to give in to me to say, yeah, okay, I will go out for wrestling. But the only thing that bothered me, I just thought, well, I don't want any boys going anywhere where no man has ever gone before. So, you know, I'm only a 4th grader thinking that, you know, what do I do about that? So, anyway, the following year in 5th grade, I go out for wrestling. And this one wrestling tournament, I remember my mother went with me. It was about I can't remember what part of the tournament I was in, but I was wrestling this kid. He got me up on you remember a wheelbarrow, you know, when someone gets your legs and you're standing on your hands and you walk on your hands, it's like a wheelbarrow. Well, when he got me up on the wheelbarrow position, he drove me to the mat and broke my arm right here. As I came off the mat, here's my mother saying, you know, what's wrong, what happened? I said, I think I broke my arm. Oh, no, you didn't. So what'd she do? She takes my arm, starts massaging right here, where it hurts, and I'm screaming my head off. So she well, let's just work it out, you know, we could just try to get this to work. So she takes my arm, she starts swinging it like this. I said, Mom, what are you doing? I broke my arm, leave it alone. She said, no, you probably just pull it out of socket. And I applaud her for this because she was a nurse, so she knows better, so she's trying to put it back together. I said, Mom, trust me, I broke it. Well, can you move it? I said, yeah, I can do this, but I couldn't do this. I couldn't move it away from my body this way, but I can move this way. He says, well, you could still wrestle if you can move your arm like that way. Just go out on the mat. I said, Mom, I'm not going out on the mat. I broke my arm. So finally she gave into it after all this pulling and shaking my arm around. She agreed to take me to the hospital to see if my arm was broke. Sure enough, they found it was broke. And the funny thing, no disrespect her, but I said, see, Mom, I told you all along that it was broke. So I had to go through that. But like I said, that's part of what she was there with me the whole time, no matter what happened. They were always supportive in that area. So I wanted to share that with you about that. What else happened? I already covered that. The one thing I like to say about wrestling, like some of the people have explained about here in sports in general, I always took pride being a wrestler and respected the discipline of the sport that gave me, that it required. 9 months out of the year, every weekend, I was going to tournaments, matches. I attended several summer camps, going back again, Sports Boosters and Mr. Knapp, who allowed me to attend some of these wrestling camps. And I participated in events such as like the Empire State Games, several AAU tournaments. I qualified in state, regional, and national levels. Even though that practices took 2 to 3 hours, but I remember there was nights and weekends, my dad would clear the furnitures from the living room, and he would show me different moves that I could try out in some of the matches and tournaments that I was in. And I remember some of the teammates would come over and we would go over some of those things that my dad would show me. So not only the time that it took me, you know, your dog tired already, you've already done 2 or 3 hours of practice, and then here he's saying, come on, let's get this furniture moved apart and let's start working on some moves. And I will tell you to this day, some of those moves that my father showed me were very unconventional, but they worked. And I can tell you to this day, when I use those moves, that's what helped me in some of my success in my matches. And I like to thank my father for that. So in closing, I would like to touch on some of the reasons why, maybe why I'm being selected into this Hall of Fame. The qualities that may have been brought out in the best of me, not only in sports but also in life. I always believe that I can always do better. I always strive to do my best. It would take dedication, practice, determination, sportsmanship, preparation, sacrifice, being a team player, being a team member, also being a leader, trying to encourage people to do better. And I think if you apply those things, like I'm talking about, these qualities that I pointed out, if you do that in life as well, you will go further in life. And that's what brings us to where we are today. So I think the leaderships and the things that I put into play, that's why I'm standing here. And I believe I possess that to my teammates to show that this is how you have to apply it in your life. So I truly am honored, and I thank you so much for selecting me into the Hall of Fame. Thank you very much.
That was very good, and a little more, too much information in part of that speech, but it's all right. And I would like to mention Danny Caraher did an excellent job in presenting for Steve, and he's married to one of my very best friends that had passed away, Dom, and we miss him, and just wanted to say that on behalf of the family. I didn't do that very good, but the meaning was there. And for wrestling, I was in sports my whole life, and I actually coached varsity wrestling 1 year. And there's one thing about wrestling that you don't get from any other sports is when you go out there, you're on your own. And if you win or you lose, there's no excuses, and it comes down to you. And you've got to be able to handle that as a competitor, and sometimes you have to handle a loss. But the victory that you get, to me, in wrestling is really more outstanding than any other of the team sports. So you did a very good job, and congratulations. Now, we'll tie into that. We're going to have our team induction for wrestlers, 66 and 67, and we're going to have a video at this time. We have to have the thing down. Is Tony working back there? The screen will be coming down any second. There we go. up. Okay. At this time, we're going to honor both the 66 and 67 team. And I'm going to read off all the names of the kids on both of those teams. I'm going to read them all off. As I'm reading them, with the wrestlers that are here or their representatives, please come up to the stage. You can do that right now. Coach, Abe Myers. Simpson, Hurd, Hanson, Scabona, Stubbs, Galena, Regal, Ritter, Worth, Jay Rogers. Coach Raymond, Stratton, Harrison Rogers, Osborne, Urcham, Uticone. Swenson, Rosari, Fritz, Calabro, Byrne, Burcham, Regal. Sit down. You stay right here. First, we're going to have Coach Myers say a few words.
I made this short, but it's going to be shorter because most everybody else said what I was going to say, especially about wrestling being one-on-one. Special thanks to Coach DeBatis being inducted into the Hall of Fame. If it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be standing here. When I was a senior in high school, he told me that if I came back to Miners to teach, he'd give me the wrestling team. So when I graduated, I applied for Miners, but because I was out of Miners Academy for only 4 years, they wouldn't hire me. So I went to work in an electrical union. And in January of that year, they got rid of a teacher, a science teacher, so they hired me. I helped Mr. DeBatis for 1 year, and he handed the keys over to me. So I got to thank him for that. He was a wonderful man. It's all been said, all right. I got, on this particular team, 4 boys that I know of, now men, served in Vietnam. And I believe that most all of you know about Danny Hansen. Also, on this team and some other teams, I'd like to have a moment of silence for wrestlers that have passed away. And they are Al Hurd, Lee Burcham, Harrison Rogers, Paul Stratton, Norm Swenson, Stewie Smith, Bill Caraher, and Matt Nazzolio. Now I'm going to turn this over to Dan.
Hang on.
Okay.
Okay. There's a man of few words right there, and he gets things done. Speaking on behalf of the 1966 team will be Dan Hansen.
You know, it's been how many years? Nothing ever changed. You know, did you notice tonight when Rod said we're going to have a short film? He looked at the wrestlers and say, "Screen."
you know. And then when he moved the podium over, he looked at the wrestlers and says, if you noticed, we moved from left to right, you know. We always had the fight for recognition. And people ask me, and this is, well, how about the 66 team? What kind of structure did you have? Truth of the matter is, we didn't have any. We just had a good time, and when it came to taking care of business, then we took care of business. And, you know, there's Coach Myers, I understand that you like ice fishing, and I've been all over the country since leaving, and so later on remind me to tell you about chicken fishing in Alabama. That's quite an experience, it really is. And on behalf of the team, we're honored and humbled by being in such good company, and we do appreciate the, being inducted. And I know you're going to do a good job again this year, because I watched the video of last year's, and Rod did a good job, didn't he? And even though... See, Rod and I were both from Tyre. We used to ride different buses together. See, that's a Southern thing. Down there, when you ask somebody, do you know so-and-so? Says, oh, yeah, we went to different schools together, you know? Old buddies, you know? But now, Rod, you did make a statement last year that I'm glad you got away with, because I never would. He was standing there, I think he was introducing his son, and he says, I've been married for, 35, 36 years. If I'd have made a statement like that, man, I'd have been met at the front door when I got home and says, for your information, it's been 33 years, 7 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days. Some of you know what I'm talking about. And I said, again, those... we're glad to be here, but we do wish that the teammates that have passed away that are no longer with us, they're not physically here with us, but I know that they're with us in spirit. And most of the teams had cheerleaders, but that's all right, because we were in wrestling. You had to fight for your respect, which we all did. That's why they used to call these guys the Dukes of Pain, And when we were wrestling in other towns, and there were some young ladies sitting down in the front row, some of these guys used to take their guy over and inflict a little bit of pain and smile at the young ladies, kind of like so. Let them know who was in charge, Hey, it happened. Inflict some pain, But anyways, we didn't need cheerleaders because we had Mrs. Myers. Seriously, it was not unusual to see Mrs. Myers on the floor, on her knees, pounding the floor up, yelling, pounding on the mat. And one time, Paul Stratton, he was kind of dogging it, and he tended to do that every now and then. And there was Mrs. Myers on the floor, screaming, and then Paul looked up at her, kind of shocked, and he turned the guy over and pinned him. Later on, I asked Paul, and I says, Paul, where'd you get that burst of energy to pin the guy? He says, I didn't. I was afraid Mrs. Myers was going to come out there and whip both of us. So we didn't need cheerleaders. We had Mrs. Myers, And the reason Jimmy Rogers won so many matches at 95 and 103 was because before every match, we always told him, you lose, you're going to have to wrestle Jack in practice. And sometimes these matches, when they're real close, I know a lot of you have been to matches, they get real, I guess for the lack of a better word, a little spiritual or rambunctious or whatever you want to call them, everybody yelling and screaming and carrying on. And we had one of those matches, and everybody was real close to the mat, and you look over on the bench, and there's Steve Ritter sitting there with his legs crossed, just kind of looking around his own little world like nothing's going on, you know? Everybody had their own personality, you know? And Coach, I kind of hate to admit this, but we didn't always follow the rules, you know? Sometimes we went over to Moreno's, and from Moreno's, went over to the Franklin Hotel, and, picked up some beer and then went down underneath the bridge. But it was all Nick's fault. You see, Nick could open beer bottles with his teeth, and we had a very close-knit team. We all kind of gelled. We didn't have any egos or, and if it wasn't for that, we never would have done that. Now, we had a very close-knit team. We all kind of gelled. We didn't have any egos or, any cliques. And the first match we had that year was in Corning. We must have had a half a dozen people in the stands. And then we kept on winning, and as the season progressed, the crowd started getting bigger and bigger, and I think we had a match in the junior high that we pretty much packed it. In fact, we had the other teams come to support us. And Coach Myers was always, and I got to tell you, Nick was as flat-footed as you can get. And Coach was always telling Nick, and says, Nick, you need to learn how to dance to make you get lighter on your feet. So we got other people involved in it. We went down to the rec center, and there was some of the girls down there, they were gracious enough to try to teach Nick how to dance. And it wasn't long before a couple of them came limping to me and says, you have got to be kidding. This is like teaching ballet to a sumo wrestler. And Jack was probably the strongest team. And at that time, you wouldn't know it now, Jack used to be 180 and above, when you got to be about 180 on up, person on our team, and at that time, you wouldn't know it now, Jack used to be 180 and above, when you got to be about 180 on up, they prided themselves as being strength, and lifted weights and all kinds of stuff. And Jack was wearing these heavy glasses, and to be honest with you, when Jack took them off, he couldn't see a hand in front of his face. So why in the world they locked up with Jack is beyond me, because from there on, it was pretty much all over. And Jack's favorite thing was the cross face, which you're supposed to take the arm nice and gently across the guy's face and then turn him over. But not Jack. He had to wind that sucker up, and sometimes you can feel the breeze all the way over on the bench, So, but I do want to tell you that, and I hate to disappoint some of you guys because, as you can see, I'm a little bit, over 54 or 67. And all I've been hearing for the last couple of days is, oh, I can still make weight, and I can still do this, and I can still do that, Well, I got news for you. If I take my legs off, I can make weight too. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Rod. And we appreciate the committee. Thanks a lot.
If I'd known about Under the Bridge, we probably wouldn't have two undefeated teams.
Good point, Coach. I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing. There was no secrets about that team. He tells everything there is to do. Very good. Thanks, Dan. Steve is now going to speak about the 67 team. I don't know. That's a tough one to follow.
Yeah. I don't know how to follow that one. However, I'd like to say hello to everyone, and it's my pleasure tonight to speak for the 1966-67 team. And on behalf of all of us that are here or not here, I want to thank the committee for the nomination and for the selection. It's quite an honor. A lot of things are said tonight, but I don't really know if everyone here knows that wrestling is one of the few sports where an individual competes. And as was said earlier, you either win or you lose, and you owe no one but yourself. And when you're done, you can feel good for winning, or you have to live with your loss. But back then, there were 12 individual weights, and that's what was so good about wrestling is you always went out and you competed against someone your own size. And we had some terrors at 103 pounds. These kids, they would go out there and they were like Mountain Man Jack at 103 pounds. And it was so good to see them to be able to compete on an equal basis. But individuals, this is also a sport where the coach doesn't pick the team as to who's going to compete. Every week before a match, we all had to wrestle off. And we had some matches in those wrestle-offs that were probably as hard or harder than anything that we were going to meet when we went up against another school. But based on those wrestle-offs, sometimes you'd win, sometimes you'd lose, and so although there were only 12 individual weight classes, we had 16, 17 people on the team because the makeup of the team changed based on the wrestle-offs. And I have to tell you that so much of a quality of a wrestling team comes from the performance of its coaches and their athletes. We were really all lucky to have Coach Myers and Coach Raymond, and they worked us at every practice, and they worked us hard. They pushed us past the limits that sometimes we didn't even know we could go past. They taught us and they drilled us on many, many different moves, counter moves that we needed to know to be successful on the mat. And we really owe more than we'll ever be able to repay to both Coach Myers and Coach Raymond. And unfortunately, all any of us can do is say thank you. Thank you, Coach. Just a few more comments about the performance. Over the years, my memory has kind of lost some of the fine point, shall I say. And luckily, my parents were able to put together a scrapbook for me. And in preparing for this, I kind of went through it and put some things together. I did find out that the 1966-67 team did win the Wayne Finger Lakes Championship, and we placed 7 wrestlers in the finals of that tournament. 2 ended up winning. Bill Simpson, who's not with us tonight, won at 183, and I won at the 157. Jim Rogers took second at 123, and Lee Bertram took third at 130. During that tournament, Minders earned 100 points in the tournament, and we beat Waterloo by 39 points. That in and of itself was probably the best part of the whole thing. Also that year, we participated in the Auburn Invitational Tournament, among others, and we had 4 wrestlers that placed first in those 12 weight classes. They were Lee Bertram, Paul Stratton, myself, and Doug Worth. Dougie also earned the trophy for the fastest pin, and that was kind of neat. In looking at some of the records, I found that those 4 wrestlers that I just mentioned, we posted a combined winning record that year of 58 wins with only 4 losses, and I thought that was pretty neat looking back on it. A few other things. A sports season is made up of many official things: scores, wins, losses, who pins who gets hurt, all those things. But there's so many more memories in the sports season. And some of them were good, and some of them probably were not so good. But that's what wrestling is about. It helps you learn how to revel in your accomplishments and how to deal with some of the things that went against you. We all have all of those, but there were some of the guys, I don't know if any of them are here tonight, but y'all remember those trips on the bus when you end up sucking on a lemon, spitting in a cup so you could kind of lose that 1/8 of a pound before you weighed in? Oh yeah, that was a fun night. How about when Coach Myers let us all play basketball to make weight? Do you remember that? That was the most pathetic thing I think I've ever seen. I saw more crossbody tackles and things, and luckily he only let us do it one time because none of us got hurt, but that was a fun time that we did, and it was kind of wild. How about us heavier guys? We got to wrestle Coach Raymond, and he would somehow teach you some moves, but he always got in that chin rub with those whiskers, and we all walked away with Matt Burns from his chin. That was kind of special. And then once we got done with him, we got to wrestle against Coach Myers. I'm pretty sure he put each and every one of us in our places, and when he was done with us, we were glad that that part of the practice was over. We all had so many vivid memories, and at times, some of them fade, but I'm sure if you asked each person up here, you could get an earful of some of the experiences and stories they had. But most of all, I think we were a bunch of kids that really liked being with each other. We cheered for each other, and yes, I did get off the bench and cheer for him too, Dan. I didn't sit back there and gaze. I cheered. So did my parents, for that matter. But we liked being with each other. We hung around with each other after season, and I think we were just real good friends, and I think that's what really made it special for me, and I hope others. So as you can see, everyone up here tonight, in addition to those that are not with us, we had a great 2-year run on the wrestling team. And so I'd like to thank the committee and the coaches, Myers and Raymond, and everyone else that helped us through our wrestling careers. It gave us a lot of fond memories of Minders and of Seneca Falls. And again, we thank you for being nominated and winning.
At this time, we're going to hand out the individual plaques. Coach Myers will come up, and we will hand you the plaque, and I'll call off the names, and we'll have you guys come up at that time, okay? First, we have Dan Hansen. Get your picture taken over there. Next is Al Hurd, and receiving for Al is his sister, Shirley Bethel. Nick Galena. Were those stories all true, Nick, that he was saying?
I hope not.
Jack Stubbs. I know Jack could make weight.
Jack said when he was in Vietnam, they didn't give him a rifle to shoot because he was, with his glasses off, he couldn't see, so they gave him a machine gun.
Ralph Byrne. Bill Regal. Jim Rogers. Paul Stratton, accepting Adrian Hansen and Paul Stratton. Steve Ritter.
The skier. I promised not to go skiing, but I cheated.
Harrison Rogers, accepting his cousin Pete Rogers.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now I understand.
We'll give it just
That's a token.
Yeah. We went through it. My assistant. Okay, very good. Okay, now, you guys get quite an honor because at this point in our program, we're going to sing the alma mater. The alma mater is in the back of the program for those of you lucky enough to have a program. You guys don't, so you're going to have to mouth it. And at this time, we're going to have Jeff Manning come up, and he has agreed to lead us in it, which, believe me, is much better than myself leading you in.
I just think we need to, one more time, thank Rod and the committee for the terrific job they did. I also learned yesterday that Hall of Fame Angie B used to have the girls sing this in the bus coming back. So the ladies know this. So we want you to really carry the water here. Dee-dee-dee-dee, proudly, on the count of four. Proudly, 1, 2, 3, 4. Proudly stands our glorious Minders, beautiful to view. Walls surround the words of wisdom, to each student true. Minders, minders, hear our praises as each voice is raised. Glory to our alma mater of our high school days. As we leave the alma mater to tread paths anew, grateful that we have for Minders and her teachers too. Minders, minders, hear our praises as each voice is raised. Glory to the alma mater of our high school days.
And very nice. Sit down for a second. We left out a person. We got to do Bill Rossari for his picture. And Bill, I apologize.
Bill was trying to make weight.
You guys can now go down there, and nice job on the alma mater.
Yeah. No, not yet, guys.
Oh, we gotta
One
take a
group picture first.
You want the chairs together?
Yes, actually, could I get?
Yeah, after this.
Everybody's getting a picture.
Yep, you gotta get your picture with the team. No, Harrison Rogers never had one. He was a late entry.
Yeah.
So
How
we
many
knew
you
that.
need?
No, I don't know. I got no clue.
Oh, you're gonna have some scanned?